Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Oh, I love that response. Thank you. This is a special meeting of the Board of Education for September 19th, 2023 is called to order. All items being considered this evening are posted on the PPS website under the Board and Meeting tabs. This meeting is being streamed live on PPS TV services website and on Channel 28 and will be replayed throughout the next 2 weeks. Please check the district website for replay times. There's been an update to tonight's agenda. We will no longer be discussing the 2023-24 budget amendments. Board leadership will look and work with staff to reschedule that discussion for another meeting. So that just leaves us with just one agenda item tonight, in addition to the consent agenda, which is we got a consent agenda and then the consideration for the dismissal of contract teacher. But first, we'll just start with the voting of the consent agenda. The board will now vote on the consent agenda. Board members, if there are any items you would like to pull for discussion, we'll set those aside for the next time we meet. Any items anyone want to pull?
Chair Hollins, there's not an item I want to pull, but I want to note and also ask permission from my board members to submit something. At the last board meeting during the committee reports, the video of the committee reports went out during my committee report. And I had a number of people afterwards ask me what I'd said during the committee report as relates to the policy committee and a policy that a number of people are interested in. And so I just want to note the minutes and the physical videotape omits something, and that I would like to ask the board, normally you do have to do it at the board meeting that it occurred at, but since I didn't know my comments weren't being recorded, I'd like to ask that an almost verbatim just statement of what I said at the board meeting be allowed to be included within the minutes, if that's okay. And I don't know, Ms. Large, if I needed to have that be voted on, or just the chair has the prerogative to include it in the minute.
The official minutes were captured in notes for that period of time. I think if you wanted to restate that in this meeting, that'd probably be the most direct and accurate way to do that, instead of retroactively restating it, stated again this evening.
Okay, I'll do that during the committee reports, and also I'll submit the statement just to include within. We're not having committee reports? Okay, how about at the end of the meeting? If that's all right, thank you.
Ms. Bradshaw, is there any changes to consent agenda?
No.
All right. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda?
Motion.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Do you want to say it now?
Sure, I can say it now.
Yeah.
I might as well do it now. Okay, this was my policy committee report at the September 5th board meeting. I reported that we're starting to build our policy committee agenda, and policies will be brought to the committee for consideration. We'll be bringing forward policy changes requested by law, proposed by community members, revisions of policies to update or align with current practice, and rescissions of policies that are no longer needed, such as the one that we had that evening on the nutrition services policy. And we're finishing up ones from previous years, such as the private fundraising to purchase school staff. As part of the last meeting of the policy committee, I'd posted a draft policy proposed by a community group referring to foundation funding of PPS staff. The discussion about this policy issue has been occurring for 6 years. It was not scheduled for discussion or action, rather it was posted for transparency. All policies, and especially the ones related to private fundraising for staff, will have committee discussion and an opportunity for public comment. I welcome the group that met earlier last spring to bring forward a draft policy for consideration if they can agree on a draft. I'd ask for it to be brought forward by October 13th so the committee can add it for discussion to the committee agenda. Thank you, Chair Hollins.
Yes, thank you for that. All right, so the board will now vote on resolution 6756 through 6760. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Student Director Silverstein, please indicate your vote.
Yes.
All right, is there any abstentions? All right, so the consent agenda is approved by a vote of 7-0 with Student Director Silverstein unofficially voting yes. All right. So next on the agenda is the dismissal of a contract teacher. Next, we're being asked to consider the dismissal of a contract teacher, Mr. Brian Chu. Employees' discipline matters are confidential under state law unless the employees request the matter to be considered publicly, which Mr. Chu has requested. In addition, Mr. Chu was entitled to a predetermination hearing under PPS policy. It was a 3-hour-long hearing involving hundreds of documents that was held on August 17th before a hearing officer and for the benefit of the board. At Mr. Chu's request, the hearing was also a public hearing. After considering the evidence, including 1,150 pages of documents, the hearing officer found that the district established that Mr. Chu's constitute insubordination and neglect of duty. Both statutory grounds for dismissals per ORS 342.865. His findings and conclusions, the document offered by both sides and the hearing itself are all before the board for consideration. Before we move to a vote, Mr. Chu has requested to address the board, followed by 3 public commenters related to the board vote. And we're going to also allow 3 additional folks to speak as well. So in order to get this going, I'm going to need to get a motion and a second.
I make the motion. Online?
Hold on, I need a motion and a second before we can start discussing. Okay.
Second.
All right, Mr. Chu, would you like to provide your comments at this time?
Director Hollins, Ms. Bradshaw's confirming that the live stream is working. We might just pause for a moment until we have that confirmation.
Thank you. So would you like-
Being streamed live.
Okay. Would you like to make a comment, Mr. Chu?
Good evening, Chair and members. My name is Noah Barish. I'm an attorney with McKenna Bishop Jaffe. I'm here on behalf of the Portland Association of Teachers and Mr. Brian Chu, educator. My time is short to address you, and in that short time, I want to make 2 main points for your consideration. The first point is this. The evidence before you does not justify dismissing Mr. Chu. As I hope you have reviewed all of it, including the statements at the pre-termination hearing, you will see, if you've reviewed that evidence, that the district's case is full of holes, and the harder you look, the more holes that you see. And the more holes that you see, the more convinced you will be that there is some other motive at work for the district to be rid of Mr. Chu. So, let me ask you a few questions. And these are not all the questions that could be asked based on the evidence, but these are a few for your consideration. First, why is it that the district claims that Mr. Chu's behavior during the February 22nd, 2022 board meeting was disruptive and grounds for termination when many other white educators more dramatically disrupted that meeting, yet none of them were investigated, let alone disciplined for that behavior? Second question. Why does the district seek to fire Mr. Chu based on statements he made outside of work time at a public meeting when he voiced a concern about the district's community engagement? And that concern was echoed and also voiced by 2 different board members at that very same meeting. Another question. Why does the district seek to fire Mr. Chu for professional emails he sent to other staff members at Tubman, raising conceptual disagreements about how best to support marginalized students at that school? These are just a few of the questions that I could ask, and if I had more time, I would have dozens of others. But I think you will see that the district's evidence is weak, and if you stop to look at it, you will question the district's case as well. So I'd like to talk to you about my second point, which is that Mr. Chu sits here today facing potential termination by this board. But in fact, it's the district's own failures, I believe, that are on trial at this moment. The district is seeking to dismiss an educator who is beloved by his students and families and transformative for students of color at Harriet Tubman Middle School. The district is seeking to terminate a teacher who advocated for racial and environmental justice within the district and in public, even when that put him in an uncomfortable situation, telling uncomfortable truths about the district's actions. The district is seeking to terminate a teacher who prioritized the needs of his students in the classroom, even when they were being failed by other adults around them. And that's why they came, and I'm talking about the students, they came to this board, not just tonight, but again and again in many months following Mr. Chu's being placed on leave. And they came to this board to ask, and in fact demand, that Mr. Chu be returned to the classroom. And the board ignored them. And I hope you don't ignore them now, because they're here behind us. There are dozens of people here who are waiting to speak to you about Mr. Chu. They're students, colleagues, families, community members, and I believe it would benefit this board to hear their voices. And when you do hear their voices, they will tell you that it was Mr. Chu, they will tell you that it was not Mr. Chu who is neglecting his duty as a teacher, but rather that it will be this board that neglects its duty to students and the community if they go ahead and dismiss Mr. Chu. So I want to leave you with a few words, and these are perhaps the most important words that I'm going to speak to you today. And those are the words of some brave Harriet Tubman students who dared to speak the truth about Mr. Chu. One said, quote, "His classroom was one of the only safe spaces that all students felt like they could go to if they were having a hard time," end quote. Another student said, "We as students value Mr. Chu so much, we really need him to thrive fully," end quote. One more student said, "Mr. Chu's removal is an immature example of PPS putting their petty workplace politics before students' education. We need teachers who care about us, and Mr. Chu was just that." So, don't take my word for it. Listen to the voices of the students who were taught by Mr. Chu. They know who Mr. Chu is. They understand his value to both them and to the larger community. So, in conclusion, I leave you with a choice. After all, the choice is yours. On the one hand, you can trust and honor the students, both behind you and the ones you've heard from, and allow Mr. Chu to serve the community by continuing to teach. Or you can ignore the needs of the students, attempt to silence a voice for racial equity, a voice for public accountability, and terminate Mr. Chu. The choice is yours. Thank you.
For public comment, we have Pedro Anglada Cordero. Chair, do you want me to call? David Skolton. Chair, do you want me to call the three up at one time? Okay. David Skolton and Jackie Dixon.
My name is Pedro Anglada Cordero. Deja is gonna read the words I wish to share with the board.
Tú eres mi otro yo. You are my other me. Si te hago daño a ti, if I do harm to you, me hago daño a mí mismo, I do harm to myself. Si te amo y respeto, if I love and respect you, me amo y respeto yo, I love and respect myself. This is how Mr. Chu began his class every day, every period. To put the poem in simple terms, I matter, you matter, they matter, we matter. In 2013, Kevin Bacon became principal at Boise Elliott Humboldt. He left in 2018. In those 5 years, students at BEH became known as Bacon's Kids for the quality of education they received. In 2015, my 7th grade year, we had no math or science teacher, only subs. Most teachers could barely control their classrooms at that time. Meanwhile, Mr. Chu was teaching social studies as well as essay writing, which we all know was not in his job description. Emphasis on the fact that we had uncontrollable classrooms and an absence of 2 teachers in 2 different subjects. Students who were known to have trouble with literacy were gaining essay skills. Mr. Chu's classroom was always the perfect temperature, always had food, always had good vibes, and produced productive, outspoken, compassionate students. One of Mr. Chu's well-known phrases was, "How can I help you learn?" to his students. Allowing practices that produce the phrase Bacon's Kids and any other practice that detrimentally impacts students and by correlation the future is a disgusting disrespect to the Portland community. By removing Chu from PPS instead of other educators, some of which won't even learn the names of their students, it makes one wonder if education is even valued in the eyes of PPS. Regardless of how you all try to paint Mr. Chu, I am a product of PPS. I see who you are. I see what you deem acceptable and the future you're leading us towards, and I am proud to be one of Mr. Chu's kids.
My name is David Skolton. Last name is spelled Scholten, and I've got someone here to also deliver my testimony for me tonight.
My name is Akeem Ballard, last name Ballard. Good evening, members of the board, the public educators, and most importantly, students. If you are a student here this evening, would you just stand up, please? Thank you, students. I appreciate you willing to oblige in that request, as I never want us to forget what we do here, why we in public education have come to serve the field that we all call dear to our hearts. It's always important to ground ourselves in our call, our charge. The students we say we're supporting to making such weighty decisions as the one before you today. As before noted, my name is Akeem Ballard. I'm currently a PhD student at UC Berkeley School of Education. I flew out here today from Berkeley, California. In that program, I study the role of race, class, and gender in public education, particularly at the intersections of the lives, lived experiences of both educators and students. And it can sound peculiar to have someone from Berkeley, California, all the way to Portland, Oregon, on such an occasion, but to me, it's almost a circling back to an auspicious board meeting here some odd 10 years ago. In that board meeting, yet another black woman student stood up to speak her voice and ask what this board would do to ensure justice was in her educational journey. Another student was ignored that evening, a circling moment that I hope doesn't happen again tonight. I didn't know the student. I didn't know the student was going to speak, but it's an honor for me to hear what the student has to say. And as I reflect back on that board meeting and remember that student, I asked a follow-up question to the board. What should a teacher who is young in the teaching profession to do when such atrocities are happening to students around them? And a board member on record told me that I should wait until I get tenure and could keep my job. Well, what happened at Portland Public Schools when I was here is sadly still happening today. We see it on full display tonight. We've seen it on full display in the board meetings that have led up until now. A testament to what happens when public officials conflate diversity and representation with justice and equity. They are not the same. In those 10 years, what I saw as a public school educator was sad to say the least and troubling to say the most. In those 10 years, I would have a principal who would go from asking me to stay and teach 3 preps as a first-year public school teacher with a 0.8 contract, and then ask me to go and told me that there was 0% chance of me staying because of how much I spoke out. I'm still speaking today because what I want the board to know is that this decision is not about the termination of a contract. It is about the vitality of your role as public servants, the decree from which is called upon the students in this audience. What is before us today is not the decision of did a teacher do this or that. What is before us today is how we will answer back to the call of students who have told you what they're asking for. They're asking for justice. They're asking for doing the very least that we promised them, giving them an education that befits the humanity that rests within them. This is what we are asked to do today. While you will make your decisions how you need to make them, as Noah said earlier, what's on trial today for this decision is not about the firing of a teacher. It's about the long-standing issues that this public school district has refused to face. It's about how when we conflate diversity and representation with justice and equity, we are ensuring that the future of our nation is not equipped to handle the beauty of the humanity within themselves because we've ignored it as well. In my short remaining time, I want to make it clear that what happened to me was an injustice, but what happened to me does not have to be repeated over and over and over again. You do not have to let children like this, students like these ones in the audience, have to suffer the wounds of the past because we're not willing to face our own wounds. We can face our own wounds. We are educators. We're called to do what other people don't want to do, to be the champion of children, to ensure that every student who passes through the doors in Portland Public Schools has access to a healthy and happy lifestyle and can be contributing members of society. And I think it's odd and perhaps peculiar at the least, but also really concerning that for an educator who has created a safe haven for students to access their education, to become their full selves, to be contributing members of society by being at board meetings is retaliated against. And who is suffering at the end? I'm not going to say you, and I'm not going to say Chu. I'm going to say the students.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, board, superintendent, community, beautiful community, students. So wonderful to see y'all here in community. I wish it was under better circumstances. Jackie Dixon, last name spelled Dixon. At PAT, we strive to ensure that all educators are guaranteed not only their basic rights, but due process, dignity, and respect. We cannot mirror the systems of oppression we're fighting against. We teach our students to advocate for their needs, be critical of information, and to stand up for what's right. As educators, we aim to arm our students with the tools necessary to navigate the complex bureaucracy and red tape of not only the public education school system, but the very world we exist in. As an educator who has served students in PPS for nearly 20 years, I have personally witnessed countless brilliant educators of color leave this district, friends of mine, colleagues of mine, community members, due to untenable working conditions, lack of support, and inconsistent disciplinary practices. I believe Brian Chu symbolizes the underdog in this district, always raising his voice to stand up for what's right, despite the fear of being retaliated against. Despite the discomfort it may create in predominantly white spaces when questioning white supremacy culture and how it functions in our public schools. He speaks truth to power. There are many educators in PPS, particularly educators of color, who've expressed feeling alone, isolated, or having fear of speaking out against racism or harassment they've faced in the workplace. Educators of color, similar to students of color in Portland Public Schools, face disproportionate levels of discipline. The numbers don't lie. The data shows very clearly that students and educators of color are disciplined more often than their white counterparts. So I asked the board, what happens when you see evidence of educators of color being harmed by the same systems of oppression students of color are harmed by? Will you interrupt these systems? I have read through the district's report. It's long, and I'm perplexed at the amount of irrelevant information included. Evidence attempting to paint Brian Chu as a villain. For example, 2 letters of expectation, which is clearly laid out in the PAT contract, are non-disciplinary. Or the inclusion of complaints which were unfounded. On the fact that Mr. Chu was singled out of a crowd of multiple educators, including white educators, as our attorney mentioned earlier, he was the only individual reprimanded for raising his voice when many members could be seen and audibly heard speaking out in a board meeting. Brian Chu should not be disciplined for his advocacy. If the concern is around his skills as an educator, we have processes laid out clearly in our contract to address those concerns and develop those skills. As an educator, we know we don't throw people away. We provide supports, we provide high expectations in order to reach them and meet them where they're at. Termination is not the answer.
Thank you. Thank you. The board will now, within the board discussion, any comments, thoughts?
You said there's gonna be 3 more people that would be added on.
I mean, be brave.
You said in the beginning there's gonna be 3 people, then you can add 3 more people on. We go back to
No, we-
All You were moving on. My bad.
Yeah, Gary? I called 3. Yeah.
So you're gonna call 3 more. I thought you already got.
Yeah. Yeah. Ali Fogarty, Celeste Baird, I was. Okay. And Chris Reiser.
You don't have to put me in my place. I took my time to come here as a parent who's been here for 11 years.
Ma'am, nobody's trying to put you in your place. No, we're all volunteers. We're all volunteers too. We're volunteers. I hear you. Can we listen to the next 3 people, please?
And we hope. I want to say I was here with all these youth last year, and they sat in your seats, and they represented this in a way that is unmatched right now.
Yes, we did.
We don't silence brown and black women. No, period. We don't. Yes. Period. Period, gentlemen. We don't. And we don't laugh at people. Thank you.
My name is Lauren Lockman, and I'm just talking with her. I was here about a year and a half ago to give almost this exact same speech for Mr. Chu. I've been here before. I've been to meetings. I've been to walkouts. I've been to walkouts for months. The amount of school that I've missed to advocate for a teacher that should have been in our school already, it's not okay. Okay, I am currently a 9th grader at Grant High School, and I'm still doing this after 2 years.
Woo! Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's from the same speech that I read almost a year and a half ago, while he was still on leave, while we were still doing walkouts, while we were still coming to board meetings. You're not saving us, you're taking away teachers that we need. Back from my speech from before, to take away Mr. Chu is to take away opportunities away from students. Mr. Chu is more than a teacher, he is like family to us. We count on him and he believes in us. We need teachers that care about us, and Mr. Chu was just that. I've had him for 2 years now. Well, I had, and whenever students go into a classroom, that we know that we will feel safe, respected, and heard. Whenever I was having a bad day and I went to his classroom, I instantly felt better. Removing Mr. Chu is extremely detrimental to students' mental health because we no longer have this critical connection to our teacher. As I said, teachers don't know your names. It's only subs. When I was in 7th grade, I had 7 subs out of 8 classes. I'm talking about how I was worried about how when I go into 8th grade and in high school I wouldn't know anything. I'm behind in all of my classes. Algebra teacher, I didn't have one. Social studies teacher, you took him away. It's also very telling that you took away one of our very few teachers of color. To us, it looks like PPS is continuing systems of white supremacy. When we demand that you reinstate Mr. Chu, we are demanding that you consider our most vulnerable and our most burdened. Do what Mr. Chu do. This would benefit us all. We have gone to so many walkouts. We have showed here. We have showed up here. We have done our part. Why won't you do yours? Yeah. These are some quotes from, again, 2 years ago. I have subs in every single one of my classes and not a single educator. How does that work? When am I going to learn the math that I need to learn? The science that I need to learn? I need people here that will actually teach me what I need to know. It's been over 3 weeks now, over 2 years, and you still haven't told us anything. You keep telling us that you don't know or that you can't help us or that you're on our side. You are not on our side. But it doesn't really seem like it because you don't seem to be responding to anything that you're doing. You tell us to show up here and we do. You tell us to advocate for ourselves and we do. You tell us so many things and we do it and we do it and we do it and you do not respond. It's really, really tiring to be going against you guys or to be trying to working with you and you just do not respond. You do not listen. Well, I guess that's my time. One last thing. If you think that taking away teachers and staff members is going to take away our voice, then you are wrong.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and people of all identities. My name is Chris Reiser, R-I-S-E-R. Nice to see you again. I come before you tonight as a passionate educator, deeply influenced by the pedagogy and practice of my man, Brian Chu. I work with Chu in the classroom, as well as Mr. Ballard, back at Lane Middle School, which means I speak from a kind of experience no one making this decision has had. I've seen Chu memorize 150 names, 45 minutes at a time, in a single day. And on that same day, which was my first day as a student teacher, a freshman from high school jumped through the first floor window saying, Chu, I need some C notes. Begging for Cornell notes. I mean, who needs a teacher like that? I mean, like everyone? Like everyone. You wish you had a teacher like that. None of y'all had anything like what he brings in the classroom every single day. Never seen it. And I know because I've tried as hard as I can to try to meet that. Like, man, if I can get a kid to jump through my window on the first day, I'm winning. But Chu, just to be clear, he's not the cancer. He's not the cancer, Director Hollins. He's the antidote. If there was a Chu in every middle school in this district, some of y'all might not be sitting here right now, but kids would be receiving an excellent, equitable education. You're talking about black kids, brown kids, white kids, LGBTQ plus kids, Native kids. All the kids respond to Chu and learn from him. Some folks were offended that they received letters and insisted that he must have coached students instead of just giving them the information that they didn't have from the people sitting up here. And so it must have been him coaching them. They couldn't have come up with their own ideas. They couldn't have been indignant about the fact that this group was actually leaving them in the dark about decisions that were being made about the school in which they were forced to go. And we could talk about the money. You know, we could talk about how, putting students in that building made it worth $120 million to the state of Oregon. I wonder if you would have gotten 120 if you didn't have black kids that were forced to be in there only during school hours. They couldn't go out for more than drop off, pick up, and recess. Why? Because you knew that they were breathing in toxic air. That's why you put a $10 million HVAC on it before you threw those kids in there. You knew. You knew. And so, but tonight, you know, is really a celebration. I want to give a shout out to Paulo Freire, who's informed both Chu's practice and my practice and Akim's practice and who else's practice. Today is his 102nd birthday. So happy birthday, Paulo Freire. May we continue fighting for freedom. It's us, y'all. Let's go. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now the board will vote on Resolution 6761.
Chair Hollins, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. When we were worried about the live stream, neither Ms. Bradshaw nor I heard if there was a motion or a second in that conversation. If there was, we just confirm for the record. Thank you very much.
The board will now vote on Resolution 6761, dismissal of a contract teacher. Is there any board discussion?
Yes. First, Mr. Chu, I think that's you, but is that right? Okay, because you were turned backwards when the hearing went on. So I just wanted to make sure I knew who I was talking about here. So, right there. Okay, thank you. That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. Are we voting now, or are we making statements, or do we have a discussion? Okay. Yeah, I know that Mr. Chu has been accused of bullying and harassing behavior and a failure to do his job, among other things. I did not find all of the alleged misconduct would rise to a level that would result in dismissal. But there are some allegations that, taken in totality, that cause me considerable concern. As a former teacher, I want to comment specifically on the allegations related to Mr. Chu's teaching and interactions with his students. Now I hear from all of you, all the interactions must have been beautiful. That's what I hear. However, statements were made that lesson plans weren't there. Yeah, they were in your head. Yeah, I taught too. They were in my head, but I could write them down pretty fast so somebody could see what I was doing. And in fact, absolutely, but he brought it out. It's in his head.
Hold on. Can we get,
So-
hold on, Patty, hold on.
Oh, yeah.
Can we please she's a new board member, so I would please if we can get her some respect, at least let her finish what she has to say before the interaction starts. Thank you.
Okay, I really can tell, I recognize that Mr. Chu cares deeply for his students. However, caring deeply is not all that is needed when one chooses to be a teacher. When Mr. Chu signed a contract with PPS, he agreed to share lesson plans, ongoing assessments, and grades. He has chosen not to do so, according to what we have.
From who?
According to what we were given at the whatever we called that, whatever we have, that's what it said. If the lesson plans are on his head, it's easy to write them down. If they're working, he can share them with other people in the district who are also care for their students. Everybody was having a hard time there, as far as I can tell. And when Mr. Chu gives all students an exceptional grade with no evidence of their work, or, according to some, was not requiring any work, in my opinion, he's not showing respect for the students' ability to learn and to demonstrate that they are learning. Now, Mr. Chu has been put on a plan of assistance before his time at Tubman. I believe that he completed the plan of assistance, but it seems that he continued to not follow the reason for that, what was requested with that plan of consistence. His lawyer did not present any defense for any of the above teaching choices, except to say that plans of assistance are not disciplinary, which, as I understand, is true. And I also understand he had only one plan of assistance.
And they were completed.
Didn't I just say that? that it was completed.
Excuse me,
Yes.
Chair
So,
Hollins, I would
I am
ask.
not going to vote now. I will vote in a minute, but those were the things that have been on my mind. When we vote, should I vote now or we wait till everybody has a chance? Okay, all right.
Is it?
Offer if the board has any questions.
No,
I
this
can
is-
answer them.
Yeah, we haven't asked any questions. Yeah, shouldn't ask us any questions. The thing is, we sit here and listen to everyone that came up to speak. All I'm asking is for the same respect to that folks on the board to listen to when people are speaking and not interrupt. That's all we're asking.
What if we hear untrue statements?
Hold on.
We should not say anything? We hear untrue statements? Be quiet about that?
There's ways that you can speak to that. Speaking out is not going to do anything.
No, it's
Okay.
here.
So,
This is it. There is no second chance, man. There is no second chance, and this is it.
okay. So I said what I had to say. Now, it's up to you guys to regulate yourselves or not. It's up to y'all. All I'm saying is, we would like to respect when someone is speaking, that you hear them. Listening to learn. That's all we're asking. We're listening. Okay, anyone else? Anyone else has something
Yeah,
they want to say?
I have something to say. So,
You expect us to listen to this and think it's okay over and over again? Or waiting for that little light to tell us when we can speak or we can't? I can't read your lips? My anger? You want me to like regulate myself and run in? You don't know what we have put up with being here in this system or how many people I know from this room, not from out in the community, but from coming here over and over again because of the injustice and the racism, Guadalupe. How many times?
So, if we, hold on. Okay, so this is what I'm about to say what's going to happen. We can either listen or we can recess or we just go to the vote. That's just how it's going to be, whether you like it or not, good or bad. So I want to hear from my colleagues. I would like to hear from my colleagues. I would like to hear from my colleagues. And if we can make that happen, great. If not, I'll just call for the vote. Whatever it is, it is. Thank you. Any other?
yeah, but I think I forgot what I was going to say. I got a little distracted. So I really struggle with this because I have maybe too many personal ties with a lot of these issues. So one of the things I do want to address is that when I was struggling with this, I kind of, had an issue with kind of categorizations of the issues that were brought up. When we're presented with Mr. Chu's record, I noticed there's kind of three spheres that we're judging, and one is, I'm gonna just try to lay it out as simply as I can. One is the behavior in the public sphere. And I agree there are some things that maybe stepped over the line, and I try to determine whether in this sphere the consequence really matched the behavior. And I am someone who really truly believes in restorative justice, and I feel like in that sphere I would not rise to the level of dismissal. On the second sphere, which I also, among all the data that was presented, and this is where I'm kind of addressing the board directly, it raised a little concern with me because I have worked as a person who trained, coached, and supervised and also evaluated teachers. And of these one of the things that teachers suffer through all the time is that, we have to make decisions on our feet all day long. There's some study that came out a couple of years ago, which like, just teachers make an average of like 1,500 decisions a day. I mean, it's draining. And if you're an A student, that's like 99%, right? If you're a 99% teacher making the right decisions, that's still 15 mistakes a day. And you can take the best teacher in the world and come up with a list of all these mistakes, and they can look up. Now, I'm not saying Mr. Chu is an awesome teacher. He could be the worst teacher in the world. I don't know. I was never his student, and I never was there to observe his classroom. So therefore, this is the issue I have, is that if we're judging Mr. Chu, if he should stay based on his teaching ability, the data presented does not give a full picture of my professional opinion, professional enough that in order to judge whether dismissal is warranted. I cannot, as someone who has had the job of observing teachers, this is not enough. because you have so many factors that are involved, whether they are administrators that do not agree or there are job issues that are going on. Some years are worse than others. I've made mistakes too, and I am not happy with them, but they happen. And then the third, so in that sphere, I kind of say that I cannot make a judgment in terms of his ability in as a teacher. The last category, and this is the part that I am the most trouble with, is a lot of the allegations have come up, and a lot of data is not public, but one of the things is that with the issues with coworkers, complaints of bullying, creating an unsafe workplace, and this is something that I am kind of talking to a lot of you, is that having been on the board for a while, not that long, but a little bit, I really got to know a lot of the people in leadership, and they really are people who are trying very hard and really in their heart to try to make things as best as possible. We do have a problem with the system, right? We are all victims of the system, in that there's always going to be a natural disconnect between leadership and what goes on the ground. One of the things that I have an issue with is that leadership also has to protect everyone else in the workspace. And as every good teacher knows, a student can't learn unless they feel safe. And that is very important. And we need teachers like that create these safe spaces. At the same time, when we are addressing racism in the workplace, all of us can harbor racial bias, all of us, no matter who you are. And it is the movement of anti-racism is the movement to bring this about and try to address these issues. This is the place where I think I disagree with some of the things I've seen in Mr. Chu's behavior. I understand the frustrations that can be encountered, but I also know that if we are trying to push the agenda of anti-racism, we need to make sure that we create a safe space, not just for the people we agree with, but also people we disagree with. And so, I understand, but let me finish, please. So in this case, this is a separate judgment where I feel like I have not seen the data. I mean, I have seen a lot, and it is convincing. And this is where the difficulty lies, is that we need to also protect everyone else. And there I am in a conundrum. So I'm sorry for that if that didn't leave any resolution, but that's where I am.
Thanks for that.
Guadalupe came.
Any other board discussions?
2017. Woo! I'm waiting to get in touch with my bias over here. Can't do it. Need some help.
All right. So I'm just give you kind of where I'm at right now on this. And I would love if people can just hear me out. If you want to talk to me afterwards, I'll be here all night. I've struggled with this issue as well. I went in to see how Mr. Chu's class was. Everybody is right. He controls his classroom. He has their ear. He has the kids' ear. It was great watching him interact with the kids. And that's something that was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And one of the things that, we're constantly, especially as people of color, one of the things that we are constantly looking at is how do we undo racism, as a system. Just hear me out. How to undo racism. And one of the things that I've seen Mr. Chu do is empower our kids to fight those same fights that we fight every day as a minority. You know, when we come to talking down, I mean, even when we, you know, talk about the marches and the advocacy that the kids did, you know, those are teaching our kids skills to undo racism. You know, those are the things, you know, that is able to instill in our kids that there's a system of racism throughout America. This is not new, but giving kids the tools to do that. And I thought that was great. You know, when I hear the other accusations of Mr. Chu, it's hard for me to look at one and rectify the other. And I was really hoping to hear from Mr. Chu today to kind of address those other allegations. Because for me, coming from him, not his attorney, not representative, but coming from him, for me would have hopefully bring some light to some of the other allegations. But you know, this is a hard decision, especially, you know, when we're looking at a teacher of color and the systematic racism that teachers of color has had to deal with in PPS. This is not new, right? And how do we not continue the perpetuating that same system? And that's kind of that's where I struggle with, is how we not do that, and at the same time making sure that we're doing right by our kids. So that's just kind of where I'm at, colleagues. Just so you guys know where I'm at on that.
So I want to just thank the students and community for your advocacy, not just tonight, but over the last 2 years. From my 10 years on the board, dismissal votes and closing schools are the two hardest votes I think that board members can make, because they impact things that parents and students hold dear. I've read all the materials, and I want to say that in my 10 years, I've had an opportunity to be on the same side with Mr. Chu and the other side sometimes. And I always appreciate a strong advocate. I think that makes our community stronger, even when we disagree. And I was at most of the incidents that, many of the incidents that are described that were at the board level, at the committee level, that Mr. Chu is involved in, including the committee meeting in which he was dismissive and abusive towards a female staff member of color. Yes, and
I would love to hear my colleagues. Thank you.
I can read the record and I can interpret it the way I was there, and I also spoke to Mr. Chu after the meeting, and I also spoke up at the meeting because I feel that when I'm in a meeting and somebody is dismissive in what I felt was mistreating a staff member of color, it's my role to speak up, and I did. So, and I will continue to do that. I think that's what you would suggest. But I would say most concerning to me is not necessarily what happened in this boardroom or in committee rooms, but the practices in the classrooms. And I've had an opportunity to talk to school leaders, including school leaders of color, in which places in which Mr. Chu. Please don't, you've had your opportunity to speak. So I'm going to just note that many of the issues that Director Sullivan raised about what was happening in the classrooms, in which grades were not based on demonstrated student work, in which there weren't lesson plans, a whole host of other things that weren't happening in the classroom, which have an impact on students, that those are things that, for me, are more important and more serious issues for Mr. Chu and his continued employment with the district than what happened in this boardroom. Thank you. Goodbye.
How many teachers in here write lesson plans for every lesson? Stand up if you write lesson plans for every lesson. Stand up. Oh, so I gotta sit down, but stand up. You gonna come into our rooms now? No, we don't do that. We don't have time for that.
Okay, hold on. So is there any other board discussions? All right, so we're going to go to the vote. So a yes vote means we are moving to dismiss. A no vote means we're not going to dismiss. All right, so all in favor?
Real quick,
No.
What are we actually voting on? I want your resolution. I want to know exactly what the things we are voting on. What you're voting on.
To dismiss.
No, what are the allegations to dismiss?
Okay, where's the resolution?
Why?
We're voting on the recommendation.
I know, I'm trying to look at it.
No, he doesn't know what he's voting on, but I hope that the youth understand and that those of you up there understand that youth were marching to bring awareness to a system that you all here continue to uphold, which is eviscerating Black and brown and indigenous children's opportunities to fully survive and thrive. So it is not our jobs as Black and brown indigenous people to undo racism, Gary. Never,
Okay.
ever, ever.
Okay.
So it's not letting one march.
Thank you. So let me answer Mr. Chu's. Hold on, I'm trying to answer Mr. Chu's question. Hold on. Okay. So. Well, Mr. Chu had a question. I'm trying to answer his question. Okay, so, Mr. Chu, what it says is we're voting on insubordination and neglect of duty. That's what we're voting on.
Before we go any further, what is the definition of insubordination? What is the definition of neglect?
Yeah, we don't have to provide that, and I'm not going to provide that. Okay, well, do what you got to do, bro. Okay. Yeah. So. Where's the vote at? So the board will now vote on, what I'll just do with it. 6761. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 Can you raise your hand so I know who did it? Okay. Andrew, Julia, Michelle. All right.
Herman Green said yes. For the record.
Okay. And I'm saying yes as well. All opposed, please indicate by saying no.
No.
All abstaining. So the resolution is approved by a vote of 4-5 to 1 with 1 abstaining. All right. We're now adjourned the meeting.